Welcome back, everybody. We've got an utter shit show that has been going on for the last few weeks in the crypto space, and I think it is going to be good news for those of us who are actually, into video games. Now, obviously I don't do this to make light or make fun of the people who have essentially been swindled in a situation like this, the people who have been screwed over, and really the real harm that has happened to real people, often because a bunch of shills on YouTube have just been pumping up these platforms. I'll have a special little segment on the guilty parties later on in this video. But of course, blockchain coming into gaming is something that's been rather frustrating, right? We've seen Ubisoft trying to do their stuff with NFTs. We have, of course, seen Square Enix talk about making significant investments into the space, but we've also seen a lot of crashing, a lot of burning, generally speaking, situation where investors are getting cold feet and where venture capitalists are beginning to look rather stupid. As for why we don't like it in gaming, just so you're aware, there's a lot of Ponzi scheme-like stuff that can happen. Even though the Epic Games Store is going to allow blockchain-based games on, Tim Sweeney himself has talked about the issues with scam-like stuff. We've got, Valve flat out saying no to the whole thing and not letting it on Steam. Of course, a lot of this stuff, though, especially with the NFTs, is to create scarcity within the kind of like market of a game, and often so that, wealth can be extracted from that, right? That's the whole point with play to earn, something that, if it does become standard in the industry, will basically cause a big class divide in games. It would be absolutely terrible. So essentially, don't like this stuff coming into our video games because it's full of bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit. A lot of people can be misled by this large amount of bullshit, and I've got a new tool for you, today's sponsor.
Ground news. Look, you can't know what you've not been shown. That's a massive problem in today's algorithm-driven world, and it's what ground.news/Bellular is solving. I got them on board because their mission aligns with ours, cutting through bullshit, through spin, through bias, and getting to the truth. Founded by a NASA engineer, they aggregate news from 50,000 worldwide sources, with full bias breakdowns and factuality breakdowns for those sources. They cover what types of outlets in terms of leaning actually even cover stories, meaning you can just go to their blind spot tool and literally find out stuff that you would have never heard about. Hell, seeing their front page, along with all of the news and how it's been covered, it feels like you're actually getting the sum total of the knowledge of basically reporting, instead of just small little slices that could lead you astray. Most recently for me, I've been researching the whole FTX situation because I think there's a bit of an impact on the games industry, one that actually a lot of you will like. And man, it was just like superpower using ground news to do that. So in a world where you often learn of things via retweets of reactions to headlines or biased, factually dubious sources, ground.news exists to let you find your footing in the truth, to have a 40,000 foot view of what's actually going on, one that takes you out of the reactionary trenches and empowers you to be a well-informed individual. So ground.news/Bellular to subscribe for unlimited access. Big thanks to them for joining up with us. Let's go.
All right, the FTX debacle, you've probably heard about it. My job today is to explain the core of it to you in, plain enough terms that we can all understand, and then we can cover how this is actually going to impact the games industry. So we've got here just two Forbes magazine covers that are being absolutely clowned on right now. Of course, this is Elizabeth Holmes in her black turtleneck because she liked to put on a really deep voice like this and wear a turtleneck so that she could look like Steve Jobs, even to the point where apparently the thermostats were set low so that she could comfortably wear her Steve Jobs-esque turtleneck even when it made no climate sort of sense. And here we've got Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, Sam Bankman-Fried is, of course, co-founder of FTX, a lot of crypto stuff. Let's just kind of put it there quite simply. And to give you an idea of the way that this guy, SBF, has been treated, this is a article from Sequoia. It was basically this massive 14,000 word weird sort of magazine profile style article called Sam Bankman-Fried has a savior complex and maybe you should too. And it has all of these what seem to be like mock excerpts of things that people have said within the company about SBF. It's all very, very bizarre. Whenever the kind of rich techno-California people, I think, get clowned on, or, you know, there's kind of like the stereotype of them, it's all stuff that basically is encapsulated by the tone of this particular article. Right, so one of those times where essentially, are we in a speculative bubble and all sense has basically left the room? Perhaps. But it's time to actually understand the story. So, one of the things about cryptocurrencies that a lot of people are very excited about is the decentralized nature of things, right? It's all up in the big decentralized ledger. And because of this love for decentralization, people have actually decided to, centralize a lot into exchanges. So Binance and FTX are two exchanges. FTX you very likely heard of, especially if you're in the United States, because you'll have had the likes of Tom Brady, you know, doing a Super Bowl, I think it was a Super Bowl commercial, but Tom Brady was involved, so was Matt Damon, lots of other famous people, of course also the likes of Graham Stephan, Andre Geek, and many other people on YouTube who were pushing their affiliate links. And as Tom Nash covered, I mean, Tom Nash, significantly smaller channel than those other guys, they offered him 50 grand for a month. He took it, it was a big disaster, and he's since big apologize, and I'll talk about that later. But if Tom, with a relatively small finance channel, was being given $50,000 a month for that kind of thing, just imagine what the Andre Geeks and Graham Stephans and those big finance channels would have been getting. So, FTX, big exchange, doing very well. Now, both FTX and Binance, these two large exchanges, also do have their own coin. In the case of FTX, it was a coin called FTT. And if I was to sort of summarize some of the role and the intent of FTT, FTT was essentially structured to operate like stock in the company. Now, it obviously is not stock in the company, but it was basically kind of set up like that. It would actually kind of operate like that. Just that, of course, it is not it's not a security like stocks or bonds that would fall under SEC regulation. And while FTX would say that it was a fully regulated exchange, well, yeah, fully regulated, but under what? Because no, the type of regulation that they were essentially being held to was a significantly lower standard than, I think what a lot of users would expect. Now, their whole thing, and one thing that many of these different exchanges will say, is that they actually do hold, one-to-one, right, what the customers put in, which, theoretically does mean that there's no way that customers could, lose out, right? Not like a situation where a bank only has on hand a tiny percentage of, what's in or something like that. So I think that's essentially there to be like, oh, don't worry, everybody, there won't be a bank run. It's fine, don't worry. Now, the thing that we're dealing with FTX is that much of their value actually ended up being tied into FTT, which is their own token. Now, because a lot of their value was held into this token, that would mean that a decrease in the value of FTT would have a disproportionately large impact on the company. And this is where things get quite interesting. So there's a guy, CZ, CZ is what he goes by. He runs Binance, right? Binance is another big exchange, and Binance actually had a whole bunch of FTT. That will become really relevant later in what could be some sort of master, assault at an enemy. Now, the thing is, we can't just talk about SBF. We've also got Caroline Ellison. So she was running Alameda, which was basically kind of like a hedge fund that I think SBF and his co-founder were tied into. But the whole situation, when you dive into it, yes, we're talking about people in their late 20s, but imagine a hedge fund ran by a bunch of weird teenagers. That essentially is the situation that we've got. Weird teenagers, as in most of this friend group appeared to be sleeping with most of the friend group. You have a lot of weird things. You've got even funny things like Caroline's Tumblr post on how apparently Imperial China court harems that were, defined by like ruthless power plays and stuff. Apparently that is the optimal form of polyamory. So there we go. We've all learned something today. So it's all a little bit strange. And I'm not really going to, judge people for being weird and whatever, but I think it's just when all of this stuff starts to line up and it kind of forms this narrative where you've got these people, they're acting very unprofessionally. The checks and the balances are not there. There's literally people who are working with email or, with communication systems that auto-delete. If you know anything about the financial space, auto-deleting communications is highly not okay. Highly, highly, highly not okay. So you got all this crazy shit going on. I mean, even SBF, he was pitching to the likes of Sequoia while playing League of Legends. But I should note that he was like Gold or Silver League. So he's nothing like, of course, our boy Martin Shkreli, who, I guess is better at League of Legends, at least. Not that that's particularly relevant. Anyway, here's the problem. Alameda was absolutely screwed. And customer money from FTX ended up being funneled in via basically a back-end setup that SBF had built, where he could take money out and do things with it, or, just do all that shit without throwing up like the usual checks and balances. So that's extremely sketch. Now, where things start to get rather funny is, of course, CZ. Right, CZ, the head of Binance, he goes and sells, I think, their entire holding of FTT. That tanks the price of that token. And a number of things happen, lots of drama, lots of rumor mill stuff. So essentially a bank run then started where people were trying to get their assets out of FTX because confidence in the platform had went. However, that then sent FTX into a liquidity crisis. Now, liquidity is just how much, let's just say you have a house and you have £5,000. Well, the house is an illiquid asset because, you can't pay for a sandwich with a brick, but the actual cold hard cash in your bank account, that is the liquid asset. So they just weren't able to pay people, while FTT, which turns out was one of the things that so much of their value is held in, was then tanking. Basically, it's as if the whole FTT thing is like a giant Ponzi scheme. And then people being very stupid meant that the Ponzi scheme exploded. Just that here the victims are, I guess, a bunch of weird venture capital people. And also people who, joined up with Graham Stephan and Andre Jeeks promo code. So we've got that. Now, the thing is, a lot of the whole crypto industry had exposure to FTT. So as an example, BlockFi held loads of FTT. They paused withdrawals. Many think it's likely they'll be facing bankruptcy. The Solana Foundation also got utterly reamed. There's a hedge fund called Akagi that had a large majority of its funds tied up in FTT. Genesis have had to pause withdrawals following the fund tweet. They tweeted that they were fine, and then they had to suspend withdrawals from their platform. So that's kind of funny. And really, this whole thing has been funny. I mean, there's all the bits of Caroline's funny Tumblr that, I guess, just sort of embarrassing stuff that came out, and everyone had a laugh at that. People have just been generally having a laugh at the absolutely absurd SBF myth-making, right? Where, you have this whole crazy thing with Elizabeth Holmes, and it's like, how does this shit happen? How do these journalists keep on getting deceived? Right? Like, all of this endlessly hilarious shit. But the main point here is that confidence overall is quite rattled. Now, the main coins like Bitcoin and Ethereum have really been okay as compared to these. But you got to remember, this is not the only collapse. Hell, it's not the only thing that's collapsed this year. I mean, the main one, of course, would be the whole Terra Luna situation. I mean, for one of those, you had like an $80 peak that went to essentially zero. Or £80 peak even. That's insane. The amount of money, the amount of wealth that was just destroyed in that. Crazy. And that's the sort of thing that you've seen happen with many, many, many different altcoins, right? The whole thing with Doge, the whole thing then with Floki Inu, right? All those things that look like very transparent pump and dump schemes. And then, of course, you have us moving into gaming then, which is why I bring this story up today. Axie Infinity was one pretty damn good example, right? We all remember that was humongous with an insane number of daily active users, many of whom were from less well-off countries, perhaps countries that had a pretty rough situation with their own currency, experiencing hyperinflation like the Venezuelan Bolivar as an example. And they were essentially in this bizarre situation where, to put it simply, relatively rich Westerners would buy digital axolotls and then lend them to people who are less financially well off, so the less financially well off people could basically just grind play to earn currency, which was, itself a token, and, with some sort of split between basically the lord and the peasant. I don't know, do we want some sort of bizarre digital feudalism to happen? Well, apparently that was basically the core selling point of Axie Infinity and what helped it get humongous amounts of money in from investors. But that all collapsed, right? It all collapsed, and we've seen so many situations like that. And the thing that really connected in with me was the situation with Northern Guilds. And it's a shame because you look at Northern Guilds, and from what I could actually tell, the people making the game were really, the actual staff were trying pretty hard. Actually, I quite like the pixel art. It's all very nice. And the bizarre NFT sort of Viking dudes you could make. I mean, hey, at least they look better than the monkeys. Or the apes, even. But anyway, this game was a weird example where the founders were really silly, but then, following the likes of the Terra Luna situation, the investors had less confidence in the overall sector, therefore they pulled out, and that is what ended up basically putting the nail in the coffin for this project. And that's why I bring it up. So a lot of the people who have been trying to move more and more into this space are the likes of Yves Guillemot, who is the CEO of Ubisoft, of course, then also Matsuda from Square Enix. And a lot of this is basically just businessmen who are looking at, what sectors are growing. What are the things that the investors like? And they probably see Axie Infinity. And they look at it and they think, wait, you've made like weird, shitty Pokemon? Just a few of you? I'm Yves bloody Guillemot. I run Ubisoft. I could make Ghost Recon NFTs. With a real game behind it. And you've got so many other situations, I forget it's the Ghibli-ish mobile game that's, of course, also got the play to earn. So a lot of these decisions are being made for these kind of broader market reasons that are quite disconnected from the actual game developers themselves. I mean, even with Square Enix, we had Matsuda saying his thing, and then, of course, Yoshi P basically saying, Nope, not in my game. That ain't happening in FF14. So to quickly go over that then, Square Enix recently sold off key Western intellectual property and studios in this year. They did that, it was a sale, $300 million is what they got, which I think some people would consider to be undervalued. That was a lot of big studios, Eidos Montreal as one big example. It's got a lot of us, I guess, kind of excited that it seems the new owner of those properties, which is a Swedish games holding group called the Embracer Group. You probably heard of them by this stage, but they are absolutely humongous. But at least it seems like we'll actually get Deus Ex again, which I'm pretty jazzed about personally. But anyway, one of the things that they basically said that was for was to help them move into the crypto space. Now, it wasn't only that, they also said that this deal will enable the launch of new businesses by moving forward with investments in fields including blockchain, AI, and the cloud. Yeah, so obviously blockchain in there to some sort of degree as the justification for this 300 million thing. I suppose I would maybe say, if you were to be charitable, they may be in a situation where those studios were not the most profitable things in the world for Square Enix, therefore they just wanted out. And this is maybe how they sell it to their investors, as being a good aggressive move rather than a loss prevention defensive move. I mean, you could maybe say that. But anyway, in 2018, they said that they would aggressively use blockchain tech. In 2019, Matsuda made more note of it. They've generally talked about it more and more. They joined the Oasis blockchain in September, and then Symbiogenesis has been revealed. It's an NFT-driven game. It is, in fact, everybody, a digital collectible art experience, a new franchise that's planned to launch in 2023. Apparently, it's a narrative-driven platform as well, so it seems to me as if you sort of take a gacha game. You've got, like, the money-making bit, in this case, the NFTs. You got the narrative bit. Maybe they're just going to have less gameplay, so it's more just collection and narrative. But the point is, I mean, there you go. NFT collectible art project, Symbiogenesis from Square Enix, hashtag NFT, hashtag NFT projects. The comments, of course, are exactly, they're exactly what you would think. there's the logo. I suppose it's nice enough. And then, of course, we've had Ubisoft, who have failed and been really a laughing stock, right? So their whole, NFT thing with Ghost Recon Breakpoint, it came out, barely anybody used it, and they have since way talked down their engagement in that space. Now, I imagine they'll still look into things, of course, but I think the point here today is that with the cryptocurrencies, I think a lot of the bullshit is kind of being forced out of that market, right? Now, I am not against cryptocurrencies. I'm not against them in principle. I mean, the idea that you can just have a Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's Bitcoin, that's actually pretty neat. If it's decentralized, you can send money across regions. Like, there are lots of novel, interesting use cases here. And I would encourage people to just to remember, technology is technology. The issues often lie when humans apply that technology, right? So what you have been able to see is a lot of pump and dumps, a lot of people basically running, IPO scams, running pump and dumps, all of this bullshit. There are actually some pretty neat uses, right? I mean, especially if you're going onto a chain that requires significantly less power usage. That is the humongous issue that I have had with a lot of this space. Thankfully, it's being worked on in some areas, but there's potentials for good there. The issue is how it's being used and what it would actually mean if it was coming into gaming. Because the part of it that really caught on within gaming was the NFT bit, right? And I think this is a situation where basically a lot of these big game companies, they almost think back to Diablo 2, right? They think back to World of Warcraft or to RuneScape or whatever. Of course, like your EverQuest 1s or your Ultimas, where there would be massive grey markets for items that would spring up in the internet. And if you have a situation where, there's only so many of a given item, it's cryptographically unique, like, there's only one. And yeah, it's digitals, but there is only one. And then that really pumps up a market like that. And what they essentially want to do, right, is they want to be the Steam of the in-game economy. Or they want to be, say, the eBay of the in-game economy, right? Because it's very, it's very level one thinking to say, oh, I'll just sell a player a hat. But the next level thinking is, oh, hang on, what if we have cryptographically unique hats? What if there's only so many of them? Maybe players can craft them, maybe artists can make them, but no matter what, there will be this vast hat economy, and we shall sit on the top. And because whatever token you earn from selling these hats in the game can then perhaps be converted into Ethereum or Bitcoin or something, or, eventually the US dollar, oh, now it's a way that people could make money. Oh boy. And now it actually ends up being something that is, I suppose, a maybe more financially exploitative or potentially more financially successful version of what's led to, say, a company like Roblox getting all of the investment that it's had. Because Roblox basically just exists off the slave labor of children. That does sound like a pretty weird thing to say. I only bring that up because on Roblox, the monetization and the creator tools are actually really awesome. But the thing is, the revenue split is pretty damn rough. So a lot of people are kind of uncomfortable that Roblox, the big corporation, is kind of profiting off people's work in the way that they are. I would hope that things there evolve to be, feel like less of a just sort of super extractive system. But that's basically the situation, everybody. Look, selling games was yesterday's game. That's a game that I'm still going to try to play with Pale Beyond, of course, but it is yesterday's game. Now, it is all about what are the more interesting ways of getting recurring revenue. Can you basically trap someone in a digital economy and then apply value-added tax, and as the game company, pull that out? That is the sort of thing that they're all looking for. And my hope is that with the large issues that this space has felt, with the collapse of FTT token, the collapse of FTX, all of this stuff, I had hoped that it would at least slow things down. Perhaps so that whenever this does come to our shores, we maybe get a more mature version that is less susceptible to sheer banditry. But I do have to be honest with you. Technology's coming. And we're going to have to deal with it. That could be a little bit tricky. I suppose my hope is that there's always a strong enough market for core gamers who don't want this bullshit and who are willing to buy and play games that actually respect them and respect their time. So that's it for me today. And of course, thank you to today's sponsor, Ground.news. You can check my link down below. I think the service that they offer is absolutely awesome, given the problems that, our kind of media culture is going through right now. So I think they just have a good mission that I would support, and that's why I was happy to welcome them onto the channel. So you can check them out down below. That's it for me. I suppose let me know what you think. Have you tried any of these crypto games? Are you following the World of Warcraft guild method with its whole method meta guild thing? Man, it's all weird. Let me know down below anyway. And hey, sure, at least we got a bit of a laugh at the expense of the bizarre venture capital people who really, really deified Sam Bankman-Fried and had it explode in their face. Because that's just funny. Have a good one. I'll see you next time.